So just recently, it was announced that the New Orleans Pelicans had officially been ruled out for playoff contention. And this is somewhat a disappointing season, since a lot of people thought that the Pelicans would make the playoffs this year, or at least that they would make the play-in tournament. But they simply have been an underwhelming team, and even last season, people thought that they would get the 8th seed in the bubble, and they disappointed. And this past offseason, with them making a bunch of big moves, it brings up the question of what's next for the New Orleans Pelicans. So in today's video, I'll be giving some suggestions to what the New Orleans Pelicans should do in their future. But before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content and to reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers. And comment on this video, start a conversation with me as I do respond to all of my comments, and play that intro. The first thing the New Orleans Pelicans need to do is get way more three-point shooters. Because when your franchise player and your best player in general is Zion Williamson, who's the most dominant paint scorer in the league right now, and he's not that great outside the paint right now, he's going to need more space so he can get to the basket and get easier shots. But Zion is so great that even this season, with not great spacing, he was still able to average over 27 points on ridiculous efficiency. But that just makes me think that he could do so much better if they added some more three-point shooters, because although their starting lineup has guys like Brandon Ingram, who's a solid shooter, and Lonzo Ball's a good shooter, they have a center in Steven Adams who can only score 10 feet from the rim. And Eric Bledsoe is definitely not someone who I would call a three-point shooter. And off the bench, they don't have that much shooters. So if they could add some shooters to their roster, it would honestly really help. The Pelicans ranked the 4th worst team in three-point percentage last season, which is far from ideal, and I honestly think if this team added 2 or 3 more really good shooters to their roster, it would honestly take them to the next level to be a playoff team. Because although their offense isn't as bad as it ranks, because it ranks 12th in the league, I honestly think they could be a top 8 offense if they added shooters, or maybe even top 5, seeing how Zion continues to progress. And if you could get into the top 8 offenses, that would add a lot of wins to your roster that could help you make the playoffs. Some upcoming free agents who are great three-point shooters who I think they should look into is guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., who's a really good three-point shooter who can hit difficult ones. Danny Green, who although he's inconsistent, defenses still respect his shots. Otto Porter Jr., who although he's been pretty bad the last 2 or 3 years, he used to be a top 5 shooter in the league, so you would hope that he could get back to that form in a new environment. Tony Snell has the best three-point percentage in the league at the making of this video, so adding him could be huge. Nemanja Bjelica is a big man who can shoot from 3 at a good rate, and you could play him at the center spot, which would maximize their spacing. Or Alec Burks, who has been pretty good at shooting the ball this season for the Knicks, and even Reggie Bullock, who has been shooting good from 3. And also, Duncan Robinson from Miami is a free agent, and although I would assume that the Heat would resign him, he hasn't been as great this season. Still a great shooter, but simply not as great as the season before, so there is a chance that they would let him go. So clearly, there's plenty of shooters in this year's free agency, so there's not really an excuse for the Pelicans to not at least grab some of them, because some of these guys won't even be demanding a huge contract, so they definitely need to add some of them. The next thing I think the New Orleans Pelicans need to do is add some defenders to their roster, because the Pelicans are currently the 8th worst defensive team in the league, which in my opinion is clearly their biggest issue. But if I'm being honest, I would have expected them not to be this bad on offense, since they have guys like Lonzo Ball and Eric Bledsoe, who are supposed to be 2 good guard defenders. Steven Adams is supposed to be a good paint presence. Brandon Ingram is long and quick, so you would hope he could be a solid defender. And although Zion isn't fast laterally, he's so big that you would hope that he could still be an above our average defender, but it simply hasn't been put together. And I think the way to fix that is by adding more defenders to this team this offseason. And some guys they should look into is Josh Richardson, who's a really good perimeter defender. Derrick Jones Jr. has been a pretty good defender this season. Jermichael Green is a solid defender who could even play the 5 position at times. Avery Bradley's a really good perimeter defender, although he's been struggling on recent teams. You would hope maybe he could turn it around in New Orleans. Nerlens Noel has been one of the best defensive centers in the league this season, and he would be a little bit better than Steve Steven Adams in my opinion, but they gave Adams such a huge contract to where it's literally impossible for them to move him. So that sucks. They could also look into a guy like Stanley Johnson from the Raptors and give him a chance because he had some bright moments this season. Although as a Raptor fan, I wouldn't want to see him go. But nonetheless, this offseason, there's a lot of guys who can defend at a high level that I think could really help the Pelicans make the playoffs next season. They only need to add 1 or 2 more good defenders, and I think it could honestly turn them from a below average defensive team to an above average defensive team, which would definitely add a significant amount of wins to their season. The third thing I think the Pelicans should do this upcoming offseason is trading 2 of their biggest additions from the previous offseason in Eric Bledsoe and Steven Adams. Because on paper, it would seem like these are 2 guys who can help your roster win. And I'm not calling them bad players or anything like that. They just don't fit well on this team. Because Adams is a player who clogs the paint for the whole team, and especially Zion in certain situations. And he's not even that great of a defender because he constantly gets burned by guards in the pick and roll. And I think the Pelicans should look into getting a center who can space the floor, kind of how Milwaukee got Brook Lopez and then they turned into a 60-plus win team. And the reason they need to get Eric Bledsoe was pretty obvious. It's because he just doesn't seem like he cares that much and he doesn't try on defense. And in general, it doesn't look like he wants to be on that team anymore. And he's not even a good floor spacer, and he likes to hog the ball a lot. And I honestly just think getting rid of him would help Eric Bledsoe and it would help the Pelicans. But I don't know how they would get rid of him unless his contract gets out. The fourth thing I think the New Orleans Pelicans absolutely need to do for their future is nail on their future lottery pick that they have this season. Because the Pelicans currently have the 5th worst record in the league right now, so they're probably going to get as high as the 3rd pick and as low as the 8th pick. And if they could make the right selection this season and honestly change their franchise, because this season, the Pelicans weren't a team that wanted to tank, but they're already pretty bad. And in future seasons, I don't think they're ever going to be this bad again. So they need to capitalize on the opportunity they have. I think they should look to select a player who could play the shooting guard position, someone like Jalen Green and a few others. And if they make the right selection, I could see them being a dynasty in the future because they already have Zion, who I think will be a top 10 player in the league in his prime, maybe even top 5. Brandon Ingram could be a top 15 player in the league in my opinion. And if they select other players who can be an all-star or maybe even a superstar, because there's always superstars at the end of the draft, at least one. If they could get a star or a superstar, that would definitely make me think that they're going to make the playoffs and potentially even win a championship down the next 5 years. So the Pelicans aren't down terrible or anything like that, like the Sacramento Kings or the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're far from the best position, but they're also far from the worst. The 5th and final thing I believe the New Orleans Pelicans should do going forward is re-signing Lonzo Ball this offseason. Because if I'm being honest, at the beginning of the year, I had the opinion that they should never signed Lonzo to a contract because he was struggling. But this season, he has honestly surprised me by playing amazing. Because this season, he's been averaging 14 points and 5 assists, shooting 37% from 3. And he's still looking as a great passer who can play well alongside Lonzo and Brandon Ingram since he's not a ball-dominant player. And I think they should honestly re-sign him as long as he doesn't ask for more than $15 to $18 million. I would re-sign him to a contract like that, but if he went over $20 million, then I would reconsider signing him. But Lonzo is just straight up a perfect fit for this team in the future, and I honestly think re-signing him is going to help them out in the long run. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Let me know if you agree or disagree with what I said in this video. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content and tell me which my goal of 1,000 subscribers. And comment on this video to start a conversation as I do respond to all of my comments. And I'm out.